These are the stories of Careblazers, the stories of husbands, wives, sons, and daughters whose world is forever changed since caring for their loved one with dementia. You'll hear stories of heartbreak. You'll hear stories of love. These stories are real, raw, and powerful. I hope these stories show you you're not alone, and I hope they give you some inspiration and help as you go through your caregiving journey.
Shannon, thank you so much for being here today. So tell us a little bit about yourself and who you care for.
So my name is Shannon, and I care for my mom. And so I care for her. The roles started changing about 5 to 6 years ago, where it felt like I was caring more for her than she was helping to care for me and the kids. So
What were some of the first signs you started realizing like something might be going on here?
Yeah, so I noticed with mom early on, she seemed to have like a change in her ability to organize things, and her paranoia got really bad, and her anxiety got really bad. And all her life she has fought anxiety, but it got to the point where she was not managing it anymore. And she only deals with naturopaths. And it seems like her brain wasn't able to manage the anxiety like it had been for her previous years. And she wouldn't recognize that at all. So that was one of the first signs.
And at what point did she get a formal diagnosis, or did she get a formal diagnosis?
She did. So at about that same time, she started having almost like an annual fall. It was missing the last stair, or it was coming down off a ladder, missing the last rung. And so they were never clustered. They were always pretty spread out. And so she had already had 2 falls when I started noticing the cognitive changes and started talking to my husband about it. And then she started losing weight, and her energy level went down. And I really think it was a lot of depression and anxiety. Mm-hmm. And she started working with her same naturopath. We're in Michigan, and he was in Alabama. And he actually encouraged her to try to go to the doctor and see physically what was going on. And so we did, and they were running all kinds of tests, and they found that her adrenal gland was not producing the hormone at the levels that it should. And at that point she said, no more, I'm done. I won't have any more physical tests done. And I said, well, can we go to a neuropsychologist? Mm-hmm. And her doctor that was running all the tests said, that's a great idea. Go get a full neuropsych eval. And so we went, and it, of course, took 4 or 5 months to get in to see him. And by the time we saw him, I had started noticing changes like in her language. It wasn't memory. Memory did not come first for her. Mm-hmm. It was really language and problem solving and initiation. She would start a sentence, and mid-sentence she would just say, I was thinking we should really go. And then she would stop. Mm-hmm. And so it was not necessarily word finding. It was really her language that drove me to really push this neuropsych eval. Mm-hmm. And so he did the full neuropsych and came back and said that he really thought it was frontotemporal. Mm-hmm. And I think he was right. Yeah. I really think he nailed it. And he said that we caught it very early. That most people don't get a diagnosis that early in the game. Yeah. Mm-hmm. She was still driving and somewhat safely in a familiar environment. So he diagnosed her then. The naturopath totally disagreed, said she is completely competent. There is nothing wrong with her brain. And so your YouTube video that you did on positive thinking, like we need to go into something thinking we're going to get something out of it. Mm-hmm. Well, his thought was if she admits that she has anything wrong, then she's succumbing to the disease and will never be able to fight it. Mm-hmm. So it was really tricky because I agree with that philosophy that, you have to think positive and look for the good and search for
Yeah.
the good and you'll find good.
Yes.
But it was like counter forces in her mind. So she wouldn't do anything at that point. I became the bad guy, and things got kind of very tricky between us because I was just looking out for her safety, but trying to let her live her life the way that she wanted to do it.
So was she living alone at that time?
She was in a condo. Okay. It was about 25 minutes, 30 minutes from my house. And it was extremely affordable because of a family situation is how she was able to get it. She was only paying about $300 a month. Mm-hmm. And she only has a very limited Social Security income. She only had about $800 a month in Social Security and very little savings. So financially, we're looking at very small amounts of money that are going to have to go a long way, especially if dementia is involved. Right. So that was a little tricky, and still is. She still thinks I'm the bad guy.
So she's still living in that condo?
She's not. So she sold that condo because she had it on land contract. And this naturopath encouraged her to do that and move back to Alabama to work with him again. And that's where I had an extremely hard time with it because I said, Mom, you're having a hard time paying your bills. You don't have a job. Financially, I don't think you can make it work down there because the cheapest apartment's going to be $900. Mm-hmm. You know, financially, you just couldn't line it up.
Right.
And so she went ahead and sold her condo and said she was going to move down there. But cognitively, she couldn't get there on her own.
Yeah.
So then I drove her down and then I flew back home. It's tricky. You know, she still has enough in her brain and wants to live her life her way. Right. And yet I know this is going to fail. And so 6 months later, she called and asked if she could come back to Michigan. Mm. And thankfully, I had put her on a wait list at, and not assisted living, independent living, but a senior community.
Okay.
Like a beautiful indoor apartments, you know, like they would have activities and different things, not the life or the place where she wanted to be, which is understandable.
Sure.
So she came back. Then we started seeing word finding problems, you know, all other kinds of dementia related issues. And then COVID hit, and huge decline when COVID hit.
And she was in this place, this independent living center.
Mm-hmm. Because I didn't know if it was safe for her to come to my house. I had 2 teenagers and a kindergartner and a husband at work, you know, and the last thing we wanted to do was give her this respiratory illness that would cause her all kinds of discomfort and pain. Yeah. And I didn't feel like I could go into her place. Mm-hmm. And after a few weeks, I decided I would go in there. I wouldn't stay, but I would go make her meals. And so we did that for a while. And now the dementia is raging, as I like to call it.
So tell me what you're noticing now that you know that it's gotten progressively worse.
Sundowners, the word finding is completely out of control now. Her memory, it has caught up, and now her memory is very spotty. Some things she'll remember, but other things, she'll take one piece of what she remembers and then confabulate it into this story, right? Like, so she'll take that one piece. And lots of paranoia, lots of delusions. The kids are always getting killed. People are always coming after me. People are raping my daughter, and I'm allowing it.
Oh, geez.
Horrible stuff.
So what do you do? How do you respond to her when she's saying that to you?
So it's been different. Like, you always say, try something. And if it doesn't work, try something else. And so some of the things I've tried go against what I've learned with you, but sometimes you got to try something.
Yes, anything.
And I would say in the beginning, when it was getting really bad, reasoning almost worked. Mom, does it make sense that they would let someone live here that's killing people?
Right. Yeah.
No. And so she could kind of reason that a little bit. But then what she told me, this is kind of her working with her naturopath, who also said to do the Sedona method, that would bring her out of the dementia. And we talked a little bit about the Sedona method, which I have used to help with the anxiety. Like, I like it. It has a place, it has a purpose, and I can really see its usefulness in some places, but not for all of this. So I try to use the Sedona method to bring her anxiety down now, even though the reasoning piece doesn't quite work. She thinks that she's interacting with the spirit world, and that these are actually true things, but I'm not in tune with them. I'm not in tune with what's really happening because it's all happening on a spiritual plane. And so it's really tricky to deal with. And so I'll try to redirect her. I'll try to say, I've talked to the people around us. They are safe. The bad guys have been caught. That rarely works. She'll ask me questions. Well, where did they go? And I say, well, they put them in jail. All the bad guys have been caught. Everybody's taken care of. But then she keeps going back. She'll say, well, they came back a few hours ago. I mean, it's like a continuous delusion she has. And so we moved from the independent living. Now we're at assisted living. That happened about 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
She went with us to look. Her paranoias and delusions were making it where she couldn't stay in independent because she was so terrified. She actually asked to go somewhere where there was security. And so I said, okay, so we went and looked at which was great because she needed to be somewhere else. We were hiring and they're called comfort keepers that would come into her independent living. And I was hoping that we were going to be able to keep her there, but it wasn't working. She was so confused and angry about who was coming, when they were coming. I would make a calendar, and it was just too much information for her to handle. So we moved her to assisted living, and the paranoia delusions unfortunately came with her. She thought that she was going to leave all of that behind, and she won't try any medication for it. And I can't make her, I promised her I would never make her take medication. And I want to hold true to that. That's honoring her way of life before dementia came. But I struggle with it because sometimes the medication does help people.
And does the facility, now that she's kind of more in an assisted living facility, have they started raising concerns that maybe she needs something because it's interfering with the other residents and other staff members?
I think we might have that conversation in the next few weeks. If, as long as she's peaceful and calm, I think that they're okay with it. But she's had a couple episodes where she says that she wants to leave, that she's going to bust out of there. She's telling them her plans. She's got her bag packed. But one thing about her is her initiation is so bad that she might pack her bag, but she's never going to initiate leaving that door.
Right.
So I tried to assure them, I understand more about dementia, I think, than they do.
Okay. Yeah. And you certainly understand more with your mom. Like, your mom better than anybody.
She's not in the memory care unit yet. They talked about wanting to put her there, and I actually said, can we wait until she tries to flee? Like, let's give her the chance first, and then go memory care if she needs it.
So how has your experience been interacting with the staff members and like communicating needs? And
it's tricky.
Yeah, I bet.
I wanted to let her settle in before I started really trying to work with the staff, let them try to get to know her, because I think she's different when I'm not around. So I got her in and was very present the first week, did not want her to feel like I had abandoned her. And then I decided to go pick up a little part-time job. I had resigned from one job in January because I couldn't work and spend time with her and be a mom. And it was just too much. And so we said, okay, take a few months and see how this goes. So then I picked up a few hours and tried to stay away, and things escalated. And And so next week, I plan to talk to him more about how can we better support her.
Yeah.
I don't think when she says she's brushed her teeth, I think they're like, oh, okay. She's not brushing her teeth. Someone needs to check on that.
Yeah.
So I think we'll get there. A lot of them have a very stoic face, which can be good for some people.
Mm-hmm.
My mom needs a really warm, really gentle, kind, like embrace.
Yeah.
And so we have found one or two, and I just keep saying, Mom, you're going to find some people that you really like.
Yeah.
And the housekeeping lady's amazing.
That's great.
And so
I imagine this was a hard time in life too, with just people wearing masks, not being able to be close, like that probably didn't help her situation at all.
No, but the sweet housekeeping lady, I said, would you just make sure that you hug Mom a couple times a day?
Oh.
So, because I'll see her, but Mom really needs to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
And she was so excited. She's like, oh, I'm a hugger. I would love to do that, so It worked great.
Oh, that's beautiful. How great to be thinking outside of the box that way. Yeah.
So that was one thing we did.
What other things have you found to be the most helpful in either responding to your mom, calming your mom, helping the situation? Any other things you've learned along the way?
So for me, it was really my mindset.
Yeah.
So doing your Careblazers course and going through and working on changing my mindset, especially because her relationship with this naturopath goes back 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
And financially, he has left her in ruins multiple times. And I know there's he's got a lot of good knowledge. And so I don't want to take that away from what she's doing, but there's some forces there where it's making my helping her more difficult. And so I would get really angry when she would butt up to me. I would just get real defensive and angry because I knew it was this other person influencing her. And so I had to let that go. And that was one of the most helpful things for helping to keep her calm.
Mm-hmm.
Because when she's really agitated, it's of course all my fault. And I would get defensive because I have compromised and sacrificed so much.
Right.
Exactly. My job, my family's life, and so then I would get angry and defensive, and I had to let that go. You said something in one of the videos, I don't know which one it was, but you said you choose to be the caretaker. No one's making you be the caregiver. And so I go back to that in my mind a lot. I am choosing to love her no matter what. I'm choosing to try my best, to try to figure it out. And that helps me stay calm. So I don't know that that'll help anybody else very much, but that's kind of what has helped me. And in helping me, it's helped her. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, so that thought was really helpful for you and your mindset, just reminding yourself, like at any moment, you could just not care for your mom. You could not visit, you could not see her. And so for you, reminding yourself you're choosing is helpful. And I think that's so personal. Like somebody else might have that thought and it might feel awful to them, so it doesn't work. But I think what you said that's really important is by helping you, it helps your mom, right? Yeah. That's the connection that is so important. I'm glad you were able to find something that's helped you in that way, because it does have that impact. It can transfer to the other person.
So that's been very helpful. And of course the diversions, trying to get her on a different path, but she gets really angry at me and says I'm treating her like a child. So I just have to be very careful with all my words. Yes. She'll call me and ask me what she should do, but if I give her suggestions, then she gets mad because I'm telling her what to do. So learning how to say, well, what could you do right now? And then she can't answer. I'll say, do you want me to give some suggestions? And sometimes that helps.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, you're definitely trying new approaches, trying different, attempts, and then hanging on to the ones that seem to work, and the ones that work one day might not work the next, and you change it up again. Like, I imagine that takes a lot of patience on your end.
Yeah.
How do you do it? So, and I'm just imagining, you have a family, you have a little girl, you have 2 teenagers, you have your mom. Like, how are you caring for yourself and making sure you're kind of, hanging in there yourself?
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the ways is, thankfully, my husband has let me cut back on my work.
Okay.
And that I actually just changed jobs, and I'm doing a job that doesn't take my mental, emotional, or it doesn't drain me in any of those ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm helping serve lunch at a school. And
yeah.
it's very rewarding. So when I go, it's a time where when I'm packing their lunch sacks, it's just quiet. And I can just use that time to fill my brain with, I do a lot of meditation while I'm doing it. I'll listen to songs while I'm packing them. It's just kind of like my time. And so I do that. I walk a lot. My husband and we walk every evening, or ride bikes every evening. Even it's just, short 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
But it's very important. My husband's been very good about making sure I get in bed and that I get good sleep. And so he's kind of done a little bit of research, and he's helping me to try to set some of those boundaries. Like, you need sleep.
Yes.
And so he supported me in that way.
That's great.
So sleep is so important. And I just get on the Careblazers Facebook page and share experiences. A lot of people I know that have been through dementia with a loved one, it's not talked about. They do it some of them do it so gracefully and beautifully, but I really need to talk about it. And when people ask me how it's going, I might cry, and I'll just be like, this is hard. This is the hardest thing I've ever done. And the sandwich shop asked me the other day, I walked in to get a sandwich, and they said, how are you today? And I bawled, just lost it completely. The 4 people working on sandwiches, they all stopped, and they all came around the counter, and they just stood. Oh. And for 2 minutes, they just listened. Oh. And then they just loved me, and then they went back to work, and I felt so much better that the whole rest of the day, someone had given me that little bit of love, and I was like, okay, I can, and they pepped me up. They're like, you got this, like it's going to get better. You got this. And you do that in a lot of your videos too. You have to remind yourself, I'm going to get through this. We've been through hard things. We're going to get through this. And it's going to be better again. I get really scared when her delusions and anxiety and paranoia are so high, and I can't help get her down. Sometimes I just have to leave, and she's and somehow she'll calm down, or then she appreciates it when I come back. It's those moments that are hard for me to keep my mind and say, we're going to get through this. Yeah. And it's going to be okay.
Yeah. You're going to get through it. And you've gotten through it hundreds of times before. It's not easy, but you've done it.
I do wish that she would see a neuropsychologist, so that I might have someone on the medical team on my side. I have a medical doctor for her. We've seen him once or twice, and I did have her see another psychologist because I needed to have a second signature so that I could have medical power of attorney. He was wonderful. He came to see her at her apartment. But he said he thought it was Alzheimer's with Parkinson's disease. And I didn't, of course, argue with him. But I've taken a lot of courses over the last 12 months, and I really think the first diagnosis has it correct.
Yeah. How was that experience for you? Like hearing, okay, it's frontotemporal dementia. No, we think it's, hearing another provider say you could get rid of it with this natural approach and not even have to deal with it. Hearing somebody else saying it's Alzheimer's. How is that to experience?
The naturopath, I carried a lot of guilt with that. I just guilt and anger, because I just felt like he was impeding my mom from accepting some help that could truly help her. What he has to offer could help. And so that led me to be his use of supplements might help her in some ways, but some of them were making it worse
Mm-hmm.
because they're stimulating the brain. But I told them they're not just stimulating the language center of the brain and the memory, they're stimulating her amygdala. Like when she
Mm-hmm.
takes this, the delusions, everything else is stimulated too, not just the
Mm-hmm.
good parts of the brain,
Mm-hmm.
is what I was noticing. So that made me angry and then guilty. Am I missing something? Does he really know something I don't know?
Right. Start to question
And then
yourself.
the new diagnosis, I just thought, he saw her for an hour.
Yeah.
He hasn't experienced the last 5 to 6 years.
Right.
Yeah. And the key to me was it wasn't memory.
Yeah. Right.
And the language piece fits so clearly with frontotemporal.
Mm-hmm.
She's starting to talk a lot about sexually inappropriate things.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of what her fears and delusions are.
Mm-hmm.
And they usually involve children. So I'm hoping that piece that comes with so many of the people with frontotemporal, I'm hoping that doesn't come.
Yeah.
But like she'll call me and she'll say, they want me to walk down the hall naked. And I'm telling them no. And to me, I feel like she's having a mind battle, right? Like in her mind, something's telling her to do this. And this part of her mind is saying, no, don't do it.
Right.
I'm like, well, keep telling them, no, that's not what you do.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, I'll come over and I'll talk to them and tell them, you will not do that.
Right.
And so then I'll get there and she's like, did you talk to them? And I said, who should I talk to? She's like, well, I don't know. And I was like, okay, I'll go talk to them. And then I'll go down, talk to the nurse's desk and come back. And I'm like, they will not make you walk down the hall naked, So I think that the first diagnosis was right, but how do I deal with that? It is what it is.
Yeah.
There's some kind of dementia there. She's not going to take any medication.
Yeah. Does she still keep in touch and have her appointments with her naturopath?
Yeah, and he thinks it would be a good idea for her to travel down to stay with him for another 2 weeks. I just don't think she can handle another trip. Mm-hmm. And if she does, mentally she might get better for a while because the depression, right? Mm-hmm. She finally gets to be with someone. There might be a little cycle. It might lift her up for a while, right? But then we're gonna go back. She really has not returned better from any of the last 2 visits with him. Yeah.
And this might be a sensitive topic we don't have to go into, but I'm just curious because it's like one of the big barriers for a lot of people is the finances, like to be able to afford for somebody to stay in a place like this. And then, I mean, I imagine costs just went up because she was in independent living and now she's in assisted living. So you have to have more care. And for somebody who, doesn't have that money, what has helped? Anything that you found to be able to help in that situation financially?
No. My brother is an angel. Mm-hmm. He is not worldly, and he refinanced his house so that we have plenty of money.
Wow.
At our fingertips. So yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And my mom's sister has also said, we will pay for her to be in the place that is the best fit for her. Wow. So between my aunt and my brother, they do the financial piece. I do the day-to-day care, and the
And how is that? You're the bad guy. Yeah. You have the hard job, face to face. How has that been talking to her sister and to your aunt and talking to your brother in terms of keeping them apprised? I'm just guessing it sounds like a really great relationship, but, and it's nice that you have their support, but how has that been to inform them about what's going on when they're not really hands-on and seeing it for themselves?
Yeah. So I touch base with my aunt about once a week. Mm-hmm. With my brother, I text him daily multiple times so that when he calls, he can try to make sense of what he's hearing her say. And so I'll text him and say, hey, we did X, Y, and Z this morning. And so when he calls, he can have something tangible to talk about.
That's a wonderful recommendation. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's worked really well. So I take a picture of the calendar where she is so that he knows not to call at 10 or 2 because they have an activity. Or he'll call at 9:30 and encourage her to go to the 10 o'clock activity. So that's how we do it.
That's impressive. That's such an excellent idea. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I really want to ask the staff at her place if they'll do a This Is Me book, where I would spend the time making it for them.
Yeah.
But if all the staff, because they all ask, like, you fill out all that information when you move in there, but you're not getting it on the people that are caring for you. And I think for my mom, that would have taken a lot of anxiety. Like if she would have felt like she was getting to know them. So maybe that'll be something to ask if I can be part of. Yeah.
I'm also just thinking off the top of my head, like for the people who are coming in, like just them calming her, reminding her, like, you're safe here. We're going to take care of you. We're going to make sure nothing bad's going to happen to you. You know, just the constant like reinforcement from other people around that she's seeing and not just from you.
Yes, that constant reinforcement. And it almost comes from the other housemates, as we call them, you know, the other residents. Yeah. That they, you know, there was one gentleman that was talking with her the other day and just saying, you know, it might seem a little scary at first, but they really just want what's best for you, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Okay. Yeah. So if you could give any sort of recommendation or piece of advice for Careblazers watching who are finding themselves in a difficult situation like you with a parent or a loved one who's maybe living in a, you know, assisted living facility and having a lot of like thoughts that aren't true, delusions and paranoia, like just anything that's been like super helpful for you, you would recommend for other people, or just any thoughts in that vein for Careblazers watching?
So working on myself first, working on getting my thoughts, so that we've already covered that. I think the other things that have been extremely helpful for her are taking walks and using nature, you know, the little pieces of nature. So we're growing a plant from an avocado seed and it changes very quickly. And so it has little changes that you can talk about almost every day. Like you can see leaves getting bigger or it's getting taller. And so that's always a touch point. Like if she's having a really rough time, sometimes if I just try to get her near that plant, sometimes we can get our attention over there, you know.
Wow. That's nice. So it's in her room.
Like, it's in her room. Yeah. And it doesn't always work. It doesn't always work. Looking for the little things, just the little successes, and let those play over in your head. She looked at me today and said, "You are a wonderful mother." And usually she's telling me that I'm allowing my daughter to be abused, you know, and saying, how could a mother do that? But today it was like she just looked at me and we connected. So holding that, hold those moments in your brain instead of the moments that are hard to hear.
Right. And those are the moments.
There's a lot of those. Yeah. There's a lot of those. But if we look, we can hold the precious moments in our mind. So those are the ones that I have to work hard to keep a hold of.
Yes.
Because they will fly away.
Right.
You know, and it's a choice I have to make. Yeah. I have to choose to remember those sweet, sweet moments. And that helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. It's so much easier to remember the awful ones and the hard ones. Kind of have to work harder to hang on to the brief moments where there's a good moment. But I love it. So mindset, connecting with nature. I love the touch point idea, like something you can like see, change, and talk about every day. And then just hanging on to the moments, no matter how few or far between, can be helpful. Yes. I appreciate Shannon, you coming on and sharing your story. I know it's not easy, but I know it can help a lot of other people know that they are not alone out there. And even after all the courses and readings and meditations and all the amazing things that you're doing, it's still just hard sometimes. Yeah. So.
And I think I just encourage people to talk about that, but don't get stuck in it. That's what I find helpful. I have to talk about it and I can't stay there.
Yeah.
I talk about it and then I go back and we're back to looking at the good and celebrating the good, you know?
Yeah. There's
So,
room for it all. It's a balance. And
yes.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's
Yeah.
beautiful. So,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you so much, Shannon, for being here and for sharing your story.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yep. Awesome. All right. Bye, Careblazers.